Hi, welcome. So today I'm going to show you how I created my own web assistant AI-driven chat widget that is custom trained on the contents of my web page. So in this example, my website boomworksfea.com has got several products related to structural engineering and finite element analysis. But what I ultimately wanted to get out of this exercise was to build an AI web assistant that users can and visitors to the website can interact with and ask some questions, and on top of that generate some leads. So if we just have a quick look at communicating with a bot, I can say, hi, how much does Gen FEA cost? That's one of the software products on the BIMWorks FEA website, and you'll see it responds with values that are correct. So it's saying that it's 3,000 New Zealand dollars per user per year. However, if you combine it with solid FEA, it would be 5,000 per user per year, which is 100% correct. So let's have a look at how we got this working, because it was quite a challenge for me to get this running and deployed on Vercel. So I'm going to be sharing with you how I put all of this together and managed to build the Vercel app from my Next.js solution on GitHub, and then how we can use that to embed it into an existing website such as I've done here, so we can create that chat widget. So the first thing you want to do is to head over to the GitHub site. So I'll put links in the description, but it's BIMWorks NZ, and this one is called Llama 3 Webbot. So in here, there's a couple of things that you need to do to get this up and running. So once you've cloned this repo, the first thing that you want to do is install, of course, the dependencies, the packages. So if we just have a quick look at those, there's a couple of them. So they're from OpenAI. There's a couple from LangChain, including the Groq. There's Pinecone and SupaBase, and then, of course, the Vercel components. I've got fast embed here, but I've replaced fast embed actually with the OpenAI embeddings, which works better because it doesn't have to perform and create a local cache. And then there's a couple of other dependencies. Anyway, I'll leave that up for you to have a look at. There's some additional files in here, like the SupaBase setup. So we're going to be using SupaBase to store the vector store in the database. And there's a couple of steps that we need to follow in order to implement that, but I'll talk about that in a second. Then we've also got the middleware TypeScript file here, which is just saying that if we create an iframe, it should only allow the following domain, which is boomworksfea.com. In my case, yours will obviously vary depending on your website. You want to go into the app folder and have a look at the routing. So there's a root.ts. So here we do all of the imports. We can create either a .env file for the environment variables, or if you're using Vercel like I've done, I'll show you how to set that up and create the environment variables. But there's a whole lot of them. So we first got the SupaBase URL and the SupaBase key, the Pinecone API key, the Pinecone environment, the OpenAI API key for the embeddings. We don't use ChatGPT or OpenAI for the AI inference. We just use it for the embedding to keep the costs down or as close to free as possible. We're using Groq, so we need a Groq API key for the LLM model. And then also our tool can send emails if it's unable to ask a question, generating leads in return. So for that, we need the email host, the email port, the email user, the email password, and the recipient, the person who's going to be receiving that email. Now, while we're in the root.ts, let's have a look at some of the setup here. So we've got our template, so a prompt template. So you'd want to customize this to suit. In my case, it's an assistant for BIMWorks, and it's saying that avoid referring to context in your response. Instead, use the word knowledge. Otherwise, when it doesn't understand a question or doesn't know the answer, it'll just say it is not in my context. But I prefer to say that just call that knowledge. I also said never to make up answers. If you're unsure, just say that I'll connect you with a BIMWorks person. And I said only answer questions related to the context, because I don't want it to make up any answers or create any hallucinations. So I want it to be very specific. If it's not 100% confident about a response, then rather say I'd connect you with a BIMWorks person rather than providing inaccurate responses or information to potential clients. I also said if you're unsure, ask for the email address so that they can, that person can be connected to a BIMWorks support person. And then I'm saying once it's provided the email address, respond saying that I'm sending the email query right away, and the BIMWorks team member will be in contact very soon. So once you've set all of that up, here we can also see in the template that we've got the context that is provided to the LLM, and we're creating a chat history, and then of course there is the user input and the AI response. Here's where the initiation of the model happens. So we're using the OpenAI embeddings, and for that we're using that text embedding ADA002 model, and for this we need the OpenAI API key. But this is only used when we initialize the model, so again those costs will be as low as possible. What I've also done, if we look at my OpenAI billing, I have set a max on these, so I've set a limit. You can see mine is still quite low, but I've set a limit on mine so that it doesn't exceed any specific amount. In my case, okay, you can't see it here, but I've set it to $120. You can of course adjust and change that, you know, just as an additional security measure. Anyway, so what else do we need to do here? These are the settings that we use for embedding the query and embed documents. The important part here is the SupaBase vector store, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But essentially here we're connecting to a table name called document2, and we are calling a function within SupaBase that I've created called match documents 3. So that's very important. We'll circle back to this, but just keep this in mind. So we've got the table name and we've got the function name that we've set up. Here are the email procedures, so that's all happening. And then when a user posts a request, then this is what happens. So then we call this post function, and you don't really have to change anything here, maybe just the email subject. So if it sends an email, this is the subject that it's going to have. And if we look at the email content, this is the email content, and I'll show you quickly what a response like that typically would look like. Okay, so back to the code. So let's go ahead. So that's all we have to do in the API chat folder. If we go back to the app folder here and we look at the page.tsx, so in here, this is the HTML generator that we're going to see. I don't think there's anything you really need to change here. If you did want to adjust things like the style and the title and the role, this is my greeting message. So when the page loads, it says, "Hi, I am BIMWorks Bob. Ask me anything about the BIMWorks API software." So you probably want to customize that and change that a little bit. What else can we see here that needs changing? Maybe the header here you might want to change. So that's what's displayed at the top here. So if I open up the widget, it says BIMWorks Bob here at the top. So you can change that over here. That's pretty much it really for setting up the environment in Next.js. There's a couple of other things here. So there's the global.css, which is the styles that we've set up. You can have a look at them, and of course you can customize some colors and styling in here. Really up to you. I didn't really change anything in the layout.tsx, and I'm lying because it seems like I did. So of course the title over there and the description. That's right. So that's what you'll have to change here to customize to suit your particular requirements. Now if we go back here to the SupaBase setup.txt, and I just for a moment jump to SupaBase, let's have a look at what we have done here to get this set up. Now you can see that I've already got my organization set up, and I've already created my project, and it's called BIMWorks Bob. And if I open that up, we can start to look at the database, and let's first look at the tables. So you can see I've got 3 tables here: document 2, document embeddings, and documents, right? So the one we're working with is called document 2, and I'm going to show you how I created this table because we're going to use a SQL query to do that. Okay, so there we go. So anyway, so this is what the table looks like. So we've got this column here for ID, we've got content, we've got the metadata, and we've got the embedding, which is a vector. And I'll show you how to set that up in a second. But let's quickly just look at the database function. So if we head over to database and we go to functions, if I scroll down here to M, we should see that match documents 3 function. Again, I've got other ones for my other databases. Probably not the best naming convention that I've used here, but anyway, you can change that in your particular case. But if we look at this function, You can see it's called match documents 3. It's got 3 arguments: filter, which is of type JSONB. We've got a match count, which is of type integer. We've got a query embedding of type vector, and then we've got the actual definition of that function. And there's a quick way to set this up. So if I just head back here and we go to the SQL editor, if we refer to the text here in the SupaBase setup.txt from GitHub, you can see here first we create a new SQL query here called create extension if not exist vector. So all you do is you go and create a new query. I've already created mine, so if I go here, you'll see it's there. You run this. I'm not going to run mine again, but it'll tell you success, no rows added. And now we've created that component for the vectors. Once that's done, you do the same, perform the same action, but this time we're going to create that document embeddings or documents for database. So if we go back here to databases again, sorry, let me go back to my tables. We're not going to create a table, not a database. I've got document 2, document embeddings, and documents. So the one here that says document embeddings is the one that created that documents embedding table. There is one thing I need to notice though, and I'll change that soon, but you'll see we're creating an embective vector here with 768 as the value, but we would want to double that in this particular case. The reason I had 768 there was because I was using fast embed initially to create the embeddings. When I switched over to Pinecone and OpenAI embeddings, I realized that that has to be doubled, so that value should be 1536. And if I head back here to my SQL editor, I think if I go here, it should show that. There we go. So you'll see here's the one that I used for this one, and we can see it's match documents 3. So that's the function that we're calling. And we can see that we've changed that query embedding vector size to 1536. All right, the rest you can leave as it is, and you run this again, and that'll create the table for you. Once the table has been created, then we create that function, and that's the one that I was just talking about. So once we've created the table, we want to create the function called match documents or match documents 3 or whatever it is going to be, and that will create it for us. Okay, so when all of that has been set up, you should be able to see your tables, and it'll be empty at this stage. It's not been populated with data yet, but I'll show you how to train your data. Before we get to that, we first need a couple of additional API keys. So next one we need here is the Groq Cloud API key. So you can just create one if you've got a Groq Cloud account. Of course, it's free, and place that in your environment variables. The next thing you're going to need is your OpenAI API key, and we can get this here. Let me just head back to my OpenAI API key. Just go to my playground, and we'll go here to API keys. And we'll go to the user keys, and I can just create a new key here. So once I've created that key, again, I'm going to place it in my environment variables, and we want to do the same with Pinecone. So all of these are on the free tiers except for OpenAI, which is running at a really low cost. So you should be all good. In fact, if we look at the cost here, if I look at my billing, you can see that's quite low. So, you know, and this has been for quite a lot of queries that I've sent through here. What I actually want to show you is my usage. So if we go back here, if we hit the usage, you'll see that all the testing I've done since I've deployed this new web app to Vercel has only been 2 cents. So basically 0. All right, so now we've got all of these keys. We need to start implementing them in our code, and then we are going to first train the model. So to train the model, I've done that in Python. So it's a separate solution. I've also placed this on GitHub for you. So if you head over to GitHub and you go to the BIMWorks Bob Python solution, then you'll see there's a train.py file here. And if you look at the train.py, you will see that this is where you need to again provide your SupaBase URL and your SupaBase key. And then what it's going to do is within the data folder, so if you create a clone of this repository within the data folder, it's got webcontent.pdf, and this webcontent.pdf is the text-based PDF file that contains all the information that I want to fine-tune my AI chatbot on. So it includes stuff like, you know, software features, compatibility, cost, pricing, models, licensing, all of that. So all the information that I want my chatbot to be trained on is contained in the web content.pdf. So scrape the information from your website or create your information in whichever way you prefer, print it to a PDF and then place it in here and call it whatever you want. As long as in the train.py you make sure that you change the file name here to suit. And once all of that is done, you can run this. Now, I have made some slight changes from the version on GitHub, and I'll update this specific Pinecone version. So you'll see I've actually got one here called train_Pinecone. And for this one, I just imported the Pinecone libraries and serverless spec. And we've got the SupaBase and Pinecone keys defined here. And then we initialize the Pinecone as you see here in the screen. So we've got this variable PC equals Pinecone with the API key. Everything else stays pretty much the same, except that this dimension should match what we've got in SupaBase. I mentioned before that's 1536 instead of the 700 and whatever. These values can stay as they are, and that's pretty much all you need to do over here. Of course, make sure that you've got the correct PDF file specified here. And when you run that, you should start to see, one more thing that I forgot to mention is, of course, I've changed the vector store here as well to be the OpenAI one. And then you can see here that we are referring to the table called document2, and the query name is going to be that function that I explained earlier, match documents3. Anyway, once all of that is done, you should be able to run this. You just go right click and run in Python terminal. That should go through and you should see an output similar to what I've got here in my terminal. So it runs through, it says HTML instance has no attribute type, don't worry about that. As long as you see that the responses is okay, and it runs through and it tells you that it's vector store created with whatever, how many documents in SupaBase, then you are good. And you can confirm that by hitting back to SupaBase and then opening up that document to table and seeing whether those values are populated. Okay, once all of that is done, we can start deploying the app now to Vercel. So just before I do that, if we just go back here into the root.ts, I just want to again show you how we connect to all of that data from root.ts. So if we scroll down a little bit and we find where we are connecting to the documents, which is actually up here. So here we can see that we're connecting to the OpenAI embeddings, just like we did with the Python script. And we can see from here the SupaBase vector store, we're connecting again to the table name and the query name matching what we had in the Python training setup. So once all of that is done, you should be able to head over to Vercel, create a new project. So if you did that, if I just go back here to my projects, you could create new project, and of course you can import that from your GitHub repository. So if you've created a fork of mine, then you'd be able to see that here. And of course, once that is done, if we want to see what that looks like, we can go and test it. So I'll just click on visit and see what happens. So we can see here is our Vercel app, and I'll just say, hi, what is GenFEA? You'll see the response is reasonably quick considering. So I'm quite happy with that in terms of, the speed. So you can see here it is, it's giving us information on the software. I can ask another question. How much does it cost? And it should again give me that correct response. And if it's unsure of something, it's going to ask to send me an email, which I'll show you in a minute. Right. So now that we've got this running, we want to embed this, and this is where the next part of the complications resided for me. So the first thing I had to do was to set up this middleware.ts. This is what it's doing, making sure that we limit that to the domain here. And then from Vercel, so if we go into the Vercel project and we head over to settings and we go down here to security, you can see there's something here called Vercel authentication. So if we click on that, what I've done is I've disabled the Vercel authentication so that it doesn't require Vercel logged in members to be logged in order to access the deployed version of it, right? So it's going to be public, in other words. So once that's all done, you are ready to go. Now, just to show you what this looks like when it is embedded in the website. So this is my existing website HTML. All I did here was I included the style here, which I'll also place in the description in the GitHub repo. So there's a style, a CSS style here that's going to handle things like the display of the widget when it's minimized or expanded, and also this rounding rectangular frame that is created around that. And also when we load the page, you'll see that it's going to be flashing or highlighting, animating that logo there at the bottom left for the first 10 seconds, and after that it'll just stay static. So that's just kind of to draw users' attention to the fact that there is a chat widget, and of course that's what it looks like when we click on it. So if we go back here, that's what the style section here does. If we head down to where we've embedded the HTML and the JavaScript into the page, mine is right at the bottom just above my footer section. Your layout may be different, but this is all that we needed to do. And again, I'll post all of this, these instructions directly on the GitHub repo. So we've got a div here that is going to contain there is the icon for the chatbot button. Then we've got the iframe container. So this is just referring to my Vercel app. The link, of course, you just get that here from Vercel. So if I go back here to the webbot and we just go to visit, that's the link right there. So quite straightforward and easy. Right, so that's what we've got here. And then we've got the script here that's going to just handle the click event on the chatbot icon here at the bottom. And there we go. So once you've done all of this, we can start communicating. And if I ask it questions that it's unable to answer, so let's say, for example, hi, can Wind CFD handle other liquids such as oil? It should respond with, it's not sure, because it wasn't in the provided training. So it's saying that I'm not sure, let me connect you with a BIMWorks person, can you please provide your email address so I can connect you to the team. I'll say sure, chrisv.get@gmail.com, and just give it a second, and that's now actually going to create that query, send it to the email that was provided in my solution. So if we head back here and if we go to the root.ts, you'll see we've got those environment variables set up here. So there is the email recipient, that's going to be myself. That's how I set it up in my environment variables. So I'll be receiving that. Make sure that you've also set up your environment variables here in your app. So if we go back here, and we go to settings and we go to environment variables, then we set up all our environment variables as necessary. So again, we've got email recipient, email password, email user, email port, email host, SupaBase key, the OpenAI stuff, the Pinecone stuff, and then for Groq API, we've got that also set up. So that is all you really need to do. It's a little bit of work, but the reward is really good and the result is quite good. So once that is running, it should have now sent the email. You can see it's actually just arrived as we speak. So I'll show you what that looks like. So there we go. We can see it says user needs assistance from BIMWorks. It's telling me that here's the history conversation, and it's providing me with the email address of that user provided. So that immediately becomes a sales lead, and I can respond to those questions in person. I hope you found that useful. If you need a similar tool such as this, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you implement that in your website. Leave your comments down below and like and subscribe. Cheers, bye.